Okay, so welcome to the Avodas HaParsha Shir in beautiful Kilas Ner Avram, Shai Chesed Yerushalayim. Tonight's Shir is in memory of Tova Rachel Bas Shimon, right, the mother of one of our attendees, a recent Olet Eretz Yisrael. And the Shom should have an Aliyah, should have much simcha in the Torah that's being learned, Ili Nishmasa. Okay, so this first pasuk in Parshas Bechukosai, Im Bechukosai telechu es mitzvosai tishmaro v'asisem osam. Right, then it talks about the reward v'nasati gishmechem be'itom. Now it's a very tricky pasuk. There's a fascinating story which we see the evidence of. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh in his perush on Parshas Bechukosai brings 42 perushim on that first pasuk. Okay, now there's a story. It's a little bit long and complicated. I'll give you the short version of it as to why the Or HaChaim HaKadosh said 42 perushim on that particularly. He lived in a town in Morocco called Sali, and he used to try to take care of the poor Talmidei Chachamim who were in town. So on Erev Shabbos, he would go and they would shecht an animal, and then he would give out meat to the Talmidei Chachamim that they should be able to have meat l'kavod Shabbos. So one week, they shechted a variety of animals for the community. All of them were treifas. All of them, there was a problem with the lung problem. Only the animals shechted for the Or HaChaim HaKadosh came out kosher. So there was a very wealthy man in the community, very important person, so to speak, and he came over to the Or HaChaim HaKadosh and he says, Rabbi, I want to buy some of your meat for Shabbos. He says, no, this is every week I shecht an animal and I distribute the meat to poor Talmidei Chachamim. And he was very upset, and then came in a poor Talmud Chacham as he was used to get the distribution of meat for Shabbos, and he was wearing rags, and this wealthy man said, I don't get meat, and this schlepper, right, this rag-wearing, schlump, he gets meat. And the Or HaChaim HaKadosh didn't want to add fuel to the fire. He didn't say anything. The rich man went away without meat. The poor Talmud Chacham went away with meat, but also having been embarrassed. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh had a dream that was wrong of him, that he should have stood up for the cover of the Talmud Chacham, and as a kapara for that, he should take upon himself golus for a year. Now, taking upon yourself golus, meaning to go into exile, means you pack your bags, and you have to go from town to town without telling anybody who you are, and you're not allowed to ask anybody for help. If they offer you, you're able to take it. And so it was. He was traveling, and he went through many difficult times. He came to a certain town where the Rav of the town was a very big person, a very holy person, and he set him up with a host, and the host said, come, we'll go to the rabbi's shir Friday night. And in the shir, the rabbi gave 14 different perushim on the pasukim b'chukosai telechu, and he said, these perushim were revealed to me. They were said in the Masifta de Rakia, in the heavenly based medrash, in the name of Rabbi Chaim ben Attar. So the Or HaChaim HaKadosh was sitting there. He was Rabbi Chaim ben Attar. He goes, Chaim ben Attar. Right? Yes. Everybody's like looking at him, shah, chutzpah, all these kind of things. Next morning, the Rav gives another drasha, another 14 perushim. And the name of Rabbi Chaim ben Attar. Once again, he goes, Chaim ben Attar. Again, and this host is yelling at him, everybody, shal shudas, the same thing happened. And that was it. They said, they locked him up. So then suddenly the Rav comes and he says, you have to release him, right? Because now I know who it is. Because he said, right, Chazal say that the Gehinnom, there's a break in Gehinnom over Shabbos, right? And it starts up again when Shabbos is over. So he said, the Sar Shel Gehinnom came to me and said, he says, I can't open up Gehinnom because you locked up Rabbi Chaim ben Attar till he makes Havdalah. I can't go back into business, right? So that was how it was revealed. And it was revealed to him that because he had so much embarrassment, so much bizyonis on that Shabbos, that kind of took care of the year, right? He managed to get it short. But we do have those 42 perushim of Im Bechukosai telechu. Okay, so that's there, which just shows the many, many ways to go. Just some of the questions, we won't address them all, but there are so many. The Meohr Einayim, the Chernobyl Rebbe, he lays them out very nicely in the beginning of his piece. He says, Bechukosai telechu. Now we know that there are different types of mitzvahs. Chukos, like Rashi says, particularly applied to mitzvahs that he says the non-Jews and the Yetzer Hara are monin oscham, which means the Yiddish word is really so much better for it. They chepe you, right? They like bother you, saying, what does this mean? How does this make any sense? You can't wear wool and linen? Why? You get a rash from wearing wool and linen? Right? Is there anything, can you explain it? Can you do? That's what's called a chukah. Right? The mishpatim are more ones, let's say, are laws of jurisprudence, how you deal with laws of damages, with theft. The person can say, okay, that makes sense. Even though Mefarshim say on the Parshas Bechukosai that when you go deep enough in every mitzvah, even the ones that we think, okay, that makes sense, there are aspects which are a chukah, and aspects which we get to something which the Torah tells us that another person wouldn't necessarily get. Right? In other words, even our laws of Lashon Hara. Initially, makes a lot of sense. Slander is a terrible thing, right? But suddenly, when you look into it, you discover the Torah's definition of Lashon Hara isn't like the court's definition of slander, right? If I wrote a newspaper article, right, saying that Rabbi Wolf is cruel and kicks puppies, okay, so he takes me to the court for slander. I have a good lawyer, and he managed to get a private detective who shows a video of Rabbi Wolf kicking puppies. There you go. It shows that it's true. So I am free of the charge of slander. I even can charge him for the court costs. According to the Torah, Lashon Hara by definition is something that's true. Now again, how do you take care of the puppies that they shouldn't be abused? We do take that into account. We do have to do that. But it just goes to show levels of things sometimes, even in the ones that we think are the most rational, that have an aspect of chukah. Now he asks, why does it describe telechu, to walk in the laws? We have all sorts of things. Lishmor, like the pasuk continues, es mitzvosai tishmoru, to keep. Lekayem, to uphold. Right? What is to walk in the mitzvahs? It's a very strange expression. Okay, and then it finishes off, va'asisemosa, meaning, im bechukosai telechu, if you walk in my laws, es mitzvosai tishmoru, and you keep my mitzvahs, va'asisemosam, and you do them. He said, obviously, if you're walking in them and you're keeping them, then you're doing them. What is this gradation that's going on? So these are some of the questions which are there. Now, we're going to get back to the Einayim in a second. I just want to introduce the medrash that we're going to take a look at. The Medrash Rabbah, the first Medrash it brings on this pasuk, Im Bechukosai Telechu, takes a pasuk from David HaMelech's Perek Kuf Yud Tes, right, 119, which is called the Tamanya Ape, the eightfold Perek of Tilim, because it's alphabetical, and you have 8 psukim for every letter. And all the psukim really focus on the concept of Torah. So one, David HaMelech says, Chishavti Durachai, I calculated my ways, I thought about my ways, V'ashiva raglai el edosecha, and I bring my legs back, or my legs bring me back, as we'll see explained, to your laws, which here are called edus, another particular name for a mitzvah, something which testifies. So the Medrash says, what's David HaMelech talking about? David HaMelech says, right, let me read, even where we have it here, in the source, David HaMelech said, B'chol yom v'yom, every single day, right? Hayisi mechashev l'makom ploni l'dira ploni sanei holech. I would have my day planned out. I would say, I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to go to this house. V'hayu raglai mevios osli l'bate knesius u'bate midrashas. And my legs would bring me to shuls and Batei Medrash and yeshivas. Okay, this is somehow, the Medrash is connecting Im Bechukosai Telechu, to walk in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to this Medrash, where David HaMelech says, yeah, every day I have plans for what I'm supposed to do, but I always end up in the base Medrash. I always end up in shul. Now that bothered me. Yeah, please.
Is there any connection between Telechu and in the Shema, the
Lech Vaderech, yeah, for sure. Right, and we're going to discuss the idea of derech in a second, maybe that'll tie it in. So what bothered me when I first read it is that doesn't seem very nice. In other words, if your daughter had a date with a young man, right? And she's waiting, at the coffee shop, wherever it is, to meet him. And, a half hour passes, and she's calling, and this, I don't know where he was, Finally, the next day, he said, I am so sorry. I was really on the way to the date, but my feet just take me to the base medrash. Next day, I know I was in the base medrash. I would not be impressed. Right? This is not an impressive thing. People are waiting for you. People are relying on you. What David HaMelech mean? He was a very important person. He was running the army. He was running the economy. And every day he says, I have my plans. I know I'm supposed to go here. I'm supposed to go there. I end up in the base medrash. Okay, it's, again, some people, one standard explanation, the way it's often given in the yeshivas, is when you really love something so much, you do find that. In other words, if you find a person who's got a hobby, right? Sometimes I know one of my rebbeim, he loved, looking for old books. So wherever he would travel, he would always end up in a bookstore. If there was an old used bookstore, he would always be, whatever he was planning to, if he passes the bookstore, in he goes. So that's one explanation. But still, there's a famous story of how the Alter of Nevardik met Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Alter of Nevardik, I believe, was a businessman at the time, Talmud Chacham, but he met Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, I think it was on a train, and he spoke with him, and he decided that he had to become a Talmud of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and he's dropping everything. So he came running to where Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was staying. He says, I've canceled all my plans. I'm going to stay with you and learn from you. He says, but you told me you were going to be traveling on business today to a town. He says, I know, I told you, I canceled. How were you going to get there? He says, I had ordered a horse and carriage. He says, did you let the carriage driver know that you weren't going to be traveling? He said, no, once I decided, he says, you owe that person money. He says, that's a terrible thing to order someone, he's going to come, he's not there. That's lesson number one if you want to be a Talmud of me, right? You don't do stuff like that. So it seems clear that it can't be just as literal as it seems. So we're going to see a few approaches. Let's start from the Chidushei Harim, I guess starting chronologically. The Chidushei Harim was the first Ger Rebbe, the grandfather of the Sfas Emes, who we'll be getting to in a second. So they bring a few of his Perushim, really, which are kind of build on each other. He says, "Im Bechukosai telechu." Okay, he quotes the Medrash of David HaMelech. So he says, "Hainu shehaya holech be'olamos ha'olyoni mimadrega madrega, v'zeh nirmaz b'milas mokom." Meaning, David HaMelech again was not just he was not a politician. Right, the picture of a Melech Yisrael and David, who he is. So every day he was moving forward, going higher and deeper in his Avodas Hashem. A makom, right, can be a place of holiness, a place where I can understand things. Dira, the idea of a dwelling, is a place where the Shechina rests. Okay, so he was on his spiritual journey, and my feet would bring me to Bate Knesios, meaning the higher I went, the deeper I went, I kept discovering that everything has to be together with Klal Yisrael. The idea of Bate Knesios and Bate Midrashos means the gathering together of Am Yisrael, right, where we plug in. David HaMelech realized, he said, I'm growing, I'm traveling, but no matter how high I get, the higher I get, the more I realize, right, this idea, and he applies the Mishnah, Im Eina Nili Mili, Aval Kshani La'atzmi Mo'ani, right? This is that you have to draw together. So that's the idea of how David HaMelech walked in that way. Another version of this, okay, it's called Likutei Arim. They bring different versions, you find quoted of it. David HaMelech said, every day I would go to this place or that place. He says, Shebechol yom ola b'machshavto lasos mitzvah b'yechidus. Every day he wanted to do a mitzvah by himself. Right? He wanted to learn by himself. Okay, so you go into shul. How many people say, I heard during Corona, oh, this is the best davening I ever had. In shul, this one annoys me and that one annoys me and I can't keep up with the pace and this one makes noise. And this is just me and God, right? This is like it. Now again, our Tefillah B'tzibur never excludes the concept of Hisbodedus and speaking to Hashem in your own language. All day we're supposed to be doing that. You don't even have to verbalize, you can even be thinking it. But nonetheless, right, our tefillah centers on the fact that it's about Am Yisrael. Our Shemona Esrei is in the plural, right? Rafa'enu, right? And that's what it's all about. Lilmod bifnei atzmo, to learn by myself, right? David HaMelech, if he could learn by himself, nobody holding him back, nobody asking him annoying questions, nobody he could fly. He said, "V'hayu raglav mavios oso lebate knesiyos," but his feet knew the truth. Deep inside, he knew the truth that isn't the way it's supposed to be done. They tell a story. I'm trying to remember. I had in the back of my head, it was Rav Pinchas of Koretz. I'm not exactly sure. That, again, as happens, Rabbonim who are very wise and very helpful get crowds of people wanting to ask them for everything from eitzas to brachas to explanations or to teach them. And he barely had time to breathe. You know, he said, I go to shul, people are like waiting, you know, over me as I'm wrapping my tefillin, right? And then I'm trying to walk home, and this one's asking me, and that one's asking me. I'm standing by the door of my house. These ones are still asking me. I finally get into the house, somebody knocks on the door. It's another emotion. I can't do my Avodas Hashem. So he asked Hashem, he said, Rebbeinu Shalom, I'm asking you, let me not find chen in people's eyes. Let me not find favor in their eyes so much. Let them not like me so much. Right? And the next day he gets up and he walks into shul, and it's as if he's invisible. Nobody sees him. Nobody's asking him anything. He goes, he davens, he this, you know, at the end of davening, nobody's waiting for him. He says Tehillim, he learns nothing. Right? And he's enjoying it. He's enjoying it. Now, it happens to be that this was just before Sukkot. Now, every year on Sukkot, the Rebbe was used to the fact that everybody wanted to help build his sukkah, right? He never had to lift a hammer, right? Everyone was there, and they would do and they would build. Maybe they would let him, you know, get up on the ladder and put on a piece of schach, you know, to be Yosei at the end there. And here, Sukkot is coming soon, and nobody's asked about putting up the sukkah. Nobody sees him. Nobody talks to him. It's already like the day before Sukkot. He schleps the boards out of the storeroom, and he tries banging away at them. He ends up with this lopsided structure, you know, that's barely standing. And that's it. Now, he goes to shul on Sukkot night, and every year he was very careful always to have guests. He would always have guests at his sukkah. And he tried approaching a person, say, do you have a place to stay? Would you come to me? Everybody just walks by him like he's invisible. So without choice, he goes into his sukkah. He's there, he and his wife. And he was on such a madrega that he used to see the ushpizin. Right? We say the ushpizin, he would say it. Avraham Avinu would come, take a seat. So he sees Avraham Avinu standing by the door of his sukkah, not coming in. He says, please, ulu ushpizin. Right? Avraham Avinu says, a sukkah that doesn't want guests isn't my kind of sukkah. That was all about Achnas Orchim. So he davened to Hashem to take away that bracha and have everybody bother him again, right? And then that was what he was, destined to do. So this is the idea. He says, deep inside, a person has to know. Sometimes a person says, I want to progress. I have to do, right? When am I ever going to learn this and that? There is no such thing as a single trip, right, to Kedusha and to spirituality. It's all connected to Klal Yisrael. So everything you do has to be brought back to that in that way. Okay, now, the Sfas Emes, his grandson, takes it a bit further. He says like this. He says, "B'chol davar v'chol makom yesh chiyus Hashem yisbarach." Meaning, when David HaMelech said, "I was planning to go to this place and planning to go to that place," that's very true. He did have a daily plan of places he had to go, meetings he had to go, right? But he says, "Rak b'chol makom hudira ulevush miyuchad l'chiyus b'kama ofanim shonim." He was going to connect with Hashem Yisbarach. Hashem is everywhere. There's nothing in the world that doesn't exist without Hashem's point of Kedusha giving it existence. The Sfas Emes once says, what gives a chazer existence? Right? Apparently there are lots of them now in Israel coming into cities to eat the garbage, and such a bit of a problem, the wild boars. He says what gives it its existence is the mitzvah not to eat it. Right there, he has in there, that's his spark of Kedusha that he has inside. So he says, in all sorts of situations, that's the way David HaMelech knew his day. I don't know who I'm going to be meeting. I don't know what's going to happen here, what's going to happen there. What I know is that Hashem will be there, and I'm able to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu there. And even though it looks very different, right? At one point I'm meeting a Talmud Chacham. At one point I'm meeting, an Apikoros. I have meetings with all sorts of people. But, he says, the Pnimius HaKol Echad. Hashem is there inside of everything. Like we have many electrical outlets in the walls here. They're different outlets. They can even be different colors. But if you plug in, you're plugging into the same electricity system. So that's David HaMelech's way of going about his day, was to plug in each place. Okay? Now he says, but that can be dangerous. It can be difficult, because sometimes the covering over the Kedusha there can be a very strong covering. Now he says the fact that a person is called a Mahalech, okay? This is Malachim. Angels are called in Sefer Zechariah Omdim, stand, as opposed to people who are Mahalchim, who walk, except notice it doesn't say Holchim for walk, it says Mahalchim. They make things walk. Okay, this is a pasuk in Zechariah, an haftarah that we say on Chanukah, the haftarah Baloscha, V'nasati l'cha Mahalchim bein ha'omdim ha'ele. Okay, so why are people called Mahalchim as opposed to the Malachim who are Omdim? I'll just tell a cute story. They say a story about a man who passed away, and he tells his sons, just in his last minutes, he says, in the second drawer in my desk are all of my Torah writings. I would like you to bury them with me. They never knew their father had Torah writings. They were, it was hidden. They go to the desk, and indeed, there are notebooks there. So they didn't know what to do. On one hand, he wants them to be buried with him. The funeral's tomorrow. On the other hand, maybe he's obviously had these hidden knowledge of Torah. Am Yisrael shouldn't lose out on it. What should they do? So they went to the Rav at the town. He says, leave me one of the notebooks that I'll see. So he opened one of the notebooks, and it was on, the Parshas in Bereshis, and it says that Yaakov Avinu was dreaming, and he saw a ladder, v'nei malachei Elokim olim v'yordim bo, and the malachim were going up and down the ladder. So he wrote, v'yesh lishol, we have to ask, why were the malachim going up and down a ladder? Why didn't they fly? Malachim have wings. It says, v'yesh l'taretz, the answer must be that they were baby malachim who didn't yet fully grow their wings. So the Rav said, I think you should follow your father's wishes. So there are these differences, but a human being is above a malach. A human being is more powerful than a malach. And that's in this idea of being mehalech. What is mehalech? So it says that you are able to connect, to make things move and connect them to their source. That's what you're able to do. So David HaMelech, going into life, is looking at every interaction, at every event, everything there is something that he is going to make connect. As he describes it here, the Sfas Emes, he says, Lios Moshe Chiyuso Yizborach B'chol Dover V'chol Makom Kanal, meaning to connect that Kedusha, which is in everything, to its source. And how do you do that? Al Yidei HaMachshava Kodem Kol Dover. By the way you approach it, by the way you look at your day. Okay, so this is what happens. Now he says, how does a person learn to do this? He says, in Bechukosai Telechu, it says, Shetiu Amelim Batorah, that you'll work hard in Torah. Now here comes a very classic example of the Hasidic approach to learning. Okay, part of the arguments in the beginning of Hasidus was the question, were the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmidim devaluing Torah study? Right? In other words, you have a classic Hasidic story like the poor shepherd boy who never got to learn anything but Aleph Beis, and he comes into Shul on Yom Kippur and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't hold the machzer, so he's just sitting there saying Aleph Beis, Gimel Dal the whole time. And the Baal Shem Tov says that, solved Am Yisrael's problems. That was Mevatel the Gzeres. So the Misnagdish approached that as, oh great, so let's just all close the books, be ignoramuses and sit in Shul going Aleph Beis, Gimel Dalet. Right? So obviously he wasn't devaluing the learning of Torah. But he says, and here's how he formulates it here, you have to realize that shelo yilios kavonas halimud leida ulahasig. Our ultimate kavana in limud is not to add on knowledge, right, and things that we have a grasp of. It's very difficult because the Jewish people, on one hand, we learn and we ask questions and we fight it out. That's our very essence, right, to try and do and get to the bottom of things. on the other hand, we also bow our heads to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, no matter how far we get, we realize, right, that we are mevatel our das to your das. Okay, so he says, the whole point in learning more is the more you learn, the more you can be mevatel your das. The more you realize how much you don't know, right? The less a person knows, you think you really know it, right? The more you learn, the more you discover. Our greatest chachamim earned the title Talmid Chacham, a wise Talmid. If you would ask any of them the day before they leave the world, so did you finish it all? I'm only at the beginning. It's only every door opens another door, opens another door. Right? So he says, this is Hayagia Tamid Batolis Batel Adas Shalamala Measoga. Right? To discover more and more what's above you. Right? And then you're able to bow your head, so to speak, but not bow the head in terms of just submission, but to become part of it. Okay? That is that idea of learning. I think it was the Toldos Yaakov Yosef said in those early years of the argument. He said, the opponents say, Hasidim lernen nicht. In Yiddish, Hasidim don't learn. He said, they're right. You just have to punctuate it differently. Hasidim lernen, comma, nicht. Hasidim, through their learning, learn to be mevatel themselves. He said, that's the point. As opposed to becoming, right, feeling more arrogant or such. Okay, again, a bit of stereotypes, etc. Now, tying this in, he says, why is it the idea of the Bote Knesios? Why the idea of connecting to Am Yisrael? So here, this is Gudel Eisner Zatzal, he was the Mashgiach in the Ger Yeshiva in Tel Aviv. He said, Abitul liklal zu hochacha bitul l'ratzon Hashem. A person who is mevatel himself to Klal Yisrael, that's a true sign of a person who's mevatel himself to Ratzon Hashem, that what he wants in life is Ratzon Hashem. Ki imo yamachshiv es hasagosov, because if he felt, hey, my learning, my spiritual levels are mine, he wouldn't want his Avodas Hashem to be benefiting a bunch of lazy people that didn't do what he did, right? That his Torah learning, I have to take time from my Torah learning to tell something to this one. Why didn't he work harder and learn it better? He said that if a person knows to be mevatel that, he says, it's not me. It's only what Hashem wants. He says, that is the idea that all of Am Yisrael are one. And each of us are all part of this and all joined together. So that's what David HaMelech, who represented Anova in so many ways, he described, in certain ways how lowly he felt. And that doesn't come to stop a person from working and growing, but to connect it up to all the different things. So I just want to finish with what the Einayim, the Chernobyl Rav, finishes with this. Right, he says that why Bechukosai? Right, we started off saying that the chukos are these laws like shatnez we don't really understand so much. He says achukim hem mitzvahs she'en lahem tam. Chukim are mitzvahs that don't have this tam, this taste that we can explain to somebody else. Hem tluyim be'emunah. Right, in other words, there's no rationalizations of the things. I know that if Hashem tells me not to wear shatnez, that would affect my neshama negatively, that would affect Jewish history negatively. That's my emunah. So therefore, he says, that's what it means, v'chukosem telechu. He says, emunah is called raglin. Okay, this is more svarim of Nistar, that emunah is called your legs, because that's what lets you go. Then he says, right, v'asisa mosam. Then a person who realizes, because I have the chukim, I realize that everything I do is not simple. I'm not just another human being, I'm a Jew. And this means that everything I do is elevated. By the very fact that I don't wear shatnez, even though I don't understand it, that shows that I'm a very different type of creature, that I'm working on a very different type of system. So therefore he says, V'nasati gishmechem be'itam, finishes off, I'll give you your reins. That means even the things you'll do in Gashmius are all going to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All of them, you're going to realize, you know what, so that means my eating is different than anyone else. My drinking is different than anybody else. And everything's going to be connected. That's the idea of Bechukosai Telechu. That helps you walk with Hashem in everything that you're doing and connect, like the Sfas said, to everywhere. There's Professor Aumann, who lives not far from here. He was a Nobel Prize winner, right, a few years back. It was in economics. I think he's really a mathematician. This whole thing called game theory. So many fascinating stories about him getting the Nobel Prize. Part of it was that, you're supposed to wear a special white tuxedo, right, with long tails and everything like that. And he wanted to know if there was shatnez in it. Usually had a tailor there in Sweden that provided it, and he was going to try to have someone bring one to Israel. Eventually he had one made up custom in Israel that would follow that model. And people asked him, they said, you're a very rational person, right? Why are you testing it for wool and linen? You're not allergic to it? No. So why? He says, because I follow the Torah, and it says, but why? He says, you have to understand. He says, what you call rationality, what was the word he used? He said sometimes you have a line that can go right or left. You can have a line that goes off someplace else. He says it's a very different system to human rationality. Just like he said, playing the piano. You can't say that's rational if I play a beautiful tune on the piano, right? He says this is part of a system that's above rational, right? That's there. So I have no problem doing something that I don't understand. Right? I saw a quote from Rav Soloveitchik. It says, Davka, because of the greatness of human intellect, is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the chukim to let us realize that even though the intellect is so great and we bring so much of it into our learning of Torah, the intellect has to bow before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to realize its right place and position. So this is the way we walk. This is the pathway David HaMelech taught us to do, and this can really change so that all of our lives are involved in Avodas Hashem. All aspects of it are elevated, and that's a great way to approach Matan Torah. Okay?